Hello everybody. Welcome to another virtual talk done by Glovo. So this talk or this session today is called Security for Developers, and it's jointly organized with WoSEC España and WoSEC Barcelona as well as Glovo. And Glovo is interested in supporting this kind of initiatives because we are one of the company's goals also to empower women in technology. Glovo is a company that basically delivers everything in the city, and I guess that pretty much everybody in Spain has heard about it, either in different contexts, delivering food, delivering packages, delivering other stuff, and so on. So let me pass word to Diana.
Hi everyone, I'm Diana Kramer and I'm the founder of WoSEC Barcelona. And of course, I will be your moderator today because Adam and Cami will be the speakers for our great talks. So first of all, we want to thank Glovo for organizing this meetup and inviting WoSEC Barcelona to be part of their TED Talks. I don't know if everybody knows, but it's the second time that we're together in Glovo. Unfortunately, this time is virtual and we can't wait to meet physical again to have drinks and eat pizza, because everybody knows that's why we go to those meetups. Also, we might have some technical difficulties. You know, the virtual world is very ephemeral, but please have patience with us if everything happens, because we have prepared some very funny or very awful, depending on your sense of humor, technical jokes, and we will laugh a little while we manage to solve them. If we don't solve them, then we will just have a very boring chat. Okay, we have two great talks today. The first one is from Adam and how to solve the old problem of accessing servers through SSH, and of course, removing the challenges it brings. The second talk is from Cami. She is from Madrid, and she will show us from a developer point of view how we can better collaborate with security, something we all need a lot. And this is actually a very close topic to me, as some of my best memories, and I would like to say greatest achievements, have been chats with developers. And that is amazing to see how many issues we can solve just by collaborating, talking, going out to beers, drinking coffee together in the lounges, going to conferences together. And, you know, it's not just about functionality versus security, the dichotomy of difficult to pronounce. Because I don't believe in it. I really think it's a false problem that just keeps us away. But I will tell you a fun anecdote how I want to see this relationship between us, or at least that drove me to have so much passion about it. And the idea is that I read in a security blog or book or tweet or something that in one of the most famous Java books, there actually is a chapter for security. So somewhere there is security. And they explain the principles of secure coding and some errors that you shouldn't do and how not to introduce some common security issues, you know, caused by how the language is created. And then in the next chapters, when they're talking about other chapters and giving some code snippets, they commit the exact errors they recommend in the security chapter not to do. So, you know, they're guilty of their own mistakes. So I think this is kind of our mission today, that the security is not just an ephemeral chapter for devs that they read once and they forget about it. It's about an open conversation that shows everybody that security is just not about just saying no, even if it seems like it is, and we do say no a lot. We're guilty of it, we're working on it, but we are a tool to be used by everyone to make our jobs easier and keep us in the press only for our successes and not through our breaches, because we know that that's on every CISO's mind there behind their head. So don't forget to always buzz your security team with questions, with any vulnerabilities you have, with absolutely anything, because they are happy to help and they're there to work together and just to give you support. And also today, feel free to ask our speakers any questions at any time, and we can start great conversations over here. We will answer the questions at the end of each presentation, and you can use the Q&A functionality in Zoom. It's called QA somewhere around there. And as we said, we will answer questions at the end and even afterwards if you have some great ideas, as we will publish the talks on YouTube. And with this, I pass the virtual mic to Adam from Glovo Security team and his talk about the day he stopped worrying about SSH export ports. Adam?
Yeah, thank you. Let me share the screen. Can everybody see the slides? All good? Diana?
Me unmute myself. Yes, it was all good.
Okay.
It was perfect.
So as Diana mentioned, I work as a security engineer in Glovo. I have a system and network engineering background, but security was always important. I consider myself to be a technological enthusiast. I like to contribute to open source software and write code in Python. I also co-founded Python SK 4 years ago, and in Barcelona, I am one of the co-organizers of the Network VCN Meetup. I work in Glovo. We have a new logo, basically with love and protection. And now back to the topic. So what's the problem with SSH? Everybody is using SSH to connecting to the remote servers, and some of the problems. So if you expose the SSH to the internet, you will get instant brute force attacks. I think that there were some studies that in some well-known IP spaces like Amazon, for example, it takes up to 1 or 2 minutes till you get the first brute force attempt. Second thing is that you have troubles with SSH key management. Sometimes it is not that easy if you have to do it at scale. And sometimes there are cases where private keys are exposed in services like Travis that can compromise part of the infrastructure. Another big problem is that SSH keys do not have a simple expiration mechanism, and basically when you create SSH key, then basically that lies on the server, and also SSH keys are not being rotated on a regular basis as the best practices should suggest. So when talking about the remote access solutions, one of the things that I would consider to be an ideal requirement is that there is nothing exposed to the network, or at least only to the trusted network. So using some kind of IP love lists or VPNs, where basically only the people that are supposed to connect to the instance or to the service have access. SSH key management pain points are not present, meaning that there is no issues with signing certificates or issuing them. The infrastructure should be already easily pluggable to the current identity and access management infrastructure, so we don't have to roll our own set of solutions. And especially important thing is the audit logging, to be able to review access logs and see what activity was happening on the instances. So there are, this is not a definite list. I mean, at Glovo, we are running completely in AWS, and we were reviewing few options when starting, and this is not a definite list. We were basically preferring open source software, and the vendor provided solutions were okay. So we came up with 3 different options. So one of was the Bastion host, EC2 Instance Connect, and AWS SSM Session Manager. So let's start with the Bastion host. Bastion host as a concept is relatively old and is extremely simple. Idea is that we only expose one instance to the internet or to the VPN, and people are connecting first to the Bastion host and then to the particular Linux instance. In most cases, deployment in cloud providers happen in a way that instances are always in the private subnet, while the Bastion is reachable from the internet or from public networks. So one of the benefits of such solution would be that it is relatively easy to deploy because one instance is enough. I mean, you put it in an auto-scaling group and you just need SSH running on the instance. And this is basically any server that is deployed in a cloud can be used as a Bastion host. Configuration of such setup is extremely simple because the configuration is pretty well known. There are also the hardening guides available on the internet. And last but not least, you can harden as you need, but again, it might depend entirely on your environment, and configuration as it is can be stored, config management, and so on. And another reason why this is actually simple is that because you practically have to touch just a single file, which is the SSH configuration. And for IAM, you have also the many different possibilities via pluggable authentication mechanisms that are natively on Linux. So for example, LDAP or PAM script, which for example allows you to execute script, PAM LDAP, which allows you to connect to LDAP directory, or PAM radius, or different options. However, when it comes to problems with the Bastion host, there are some few of them. SSH port is exposed to the network. It has to be. There are ways how you can mitigate a little bit this. So basically, you just do some form of IP whitelisting, but this doesn't always work. For example, in the ongoing COVID-19 situation where most of us are working from home, and we cannot just whitelist everybody's IP because it doesn't scale because IPs are changing and so on. So people tend to deploy VPN or similar access solutions. But with the running such system is that you have a disadvantage of running one more system that you have to maintain. Given the fact that you are running Bastion host, you need to have an instance which you need to maintain a configuration, security group, and so on. So there is some maintenance involved. And Bastion is not always considered critical in the times of no incidents. What I mean by this is that nobody cares about the Bastion host unless you need to connect to the instance. So based on this, it also deserves gets such attention. So in most cases, the Bastion host will never be running always the latest security updates, which could be a problem if there is a remote vulnerability or some security fixes are missing. And another big problem with the SSH key with Bastion is the SSH key management. As I mentioned earlier, is that then there is no key expiration. So for example, if you have a employee or a person who is working on a server and they are using the key, then we cannot say that his access is valid only for 5 days. So in most cases, the SSH key has to be removed by the administrator or some automation. Solution to this is something OpenSSH has, and that's OpenSSH Certificate Authority. Idea is that you are able to create a set of trusted certificates that you are able to sign. Then you have a key expiration, but you do not have revocation lists, for example. So for example, if your CA is leaked, or you have a problem, then you need to create the revocation lists, but you have to distribute them either via automation or some other way because there is no native way how to deliver these lists. Another topic, a problem I actually added was like an IAM management. In some cases, there might be an extra infrastructure needed, though most companies have solutions of some kinds of either some Active Directories or single sign-on providers and so on. So in most cases, they just need to expose a particular interface to the data, and they just have to configure the connector, but it might require some additional configuration. I mean, it works, but I think it's not great, not terrible, and I'm pretty sure that we can do better than that. And another contender we looked into was EC2 Instance Connect. EC2 Instance Connect is a service that completely replaces the Bastion host. It provides an interface to upload SSH keys, and those keys disappear after 60 seconds. There is an AWS API action called EC2 Instance Connect Send SSH public key, which I will describe in the following slides. Good thing about EC2 Instance Connect is that we don't have to roll our own IAM infrastructure because we are able to grant permissions based on AWS IAM policy. So for example, if you are already using IAM roles or IAM users, you need to give users the access to particular machines. You can just add a policy for send SSH public key, and people will be able to use the EC2 Instance Connect. And one of my favorite is that it always, given that is an API, AWS API, you can reuse the AWS CloudTrail for auditing events. So this is a pretty well understood format by many CMs of some CM providers and CM applications, and basically you can write queries and analytics relatively easy. So how does the EC2 Instance Connect work? So basically, user first has to authenticate itself to the IAM, and then he uploads the SSH, he uploads the public key, and then he is able to access the EC2 instance. EC2 instance requires to have a helper script, or actually helper package, which is EC2 instance, called EC2 Instance Connect. And under the hood, it uses the OpenSSH authorized keys command, which basically every time when a user connects, it executes a script and it fetches the public keys from the metadata. And these public keys are added here via the EC2 Instance Connect send SSH public key action. AWS provides out of the box 2 ways how you can connect. So they are basically providing EC2 Instance Connect command line interface. Though every time when you are connecting, you need to know the instance ID, which is not always the most user-friendly way, and it's fully integrated in the AWS Web Console. And regular SSH like SSH, OpenSSH or PuTTY client works as well, but first you need to upload the key via the send SSH public key API call to Amazon. So how does the send SSH public key event look like? So event name is called SSH send SSH public key. Important thing is that when you are uploading, you are specifying 3 parameters: the instance ID, where you want to connect particular user. In Amazon, by default, it is in most cases EC2-user, and the SSH key that you want to upload to the metadata. And basically all of this information alongside who uploaded the key is available in CloudTrail. So in the bottom part of the screen, you can see that, for example, my work email is basically used to upload the key to the instance starting with 07 and user EC2 user, and this particular SSH key. So I am able to track when I was connecting to the particular instance, or when there was an activity by me or by somebody else. So benefit of this approach is that you do not need to run any extra instances because this is a managed service. You have access directly via the web console, which is a extremely pleasant way when you are working in a console and you need to connect and check something on the instance. Access control is done completely via the AWS IAM identity and access management. So if you already have set up for IAM roles for your teams, users, departments, and so on, you can just add particular action, the send SSH public key to the policy and attach it to the role. So people will be able to connect to the instance. Auditing is done via AWS CloudTrail. This is also a especially important benefit because you do not need to set up additional pipelines or anything, because if you are already following the best practices, then you're already monitoring the events in CloudTrail. And for you, this is just creating a new alert or dashboard watching the particular event. And last but not least is I consider this to be also one of the biggest one, is that all SSH keys, the key management is basically gone, because I mean, given the fact that the keys are removed after 60 seconds, then all SSH keys are effectively temporary. However, EC2 Instance Connect also comes with some problems. We still need to expose the SSH port to the network, which is not always ideal. And this service to work, you need to have, for example, for this service to work from AWS console, the instances need to be exposed via public subnet. So basically, they need to be exposed to the internet. However, if you are combining these two approaches with the Bastion host and EC2 Instance Connect, then what you can actually achieve is that you can protect the Bastion host, and from that host you can connect to the other instances. I also added one of the problems, like sometimes non-trivial AWS IAM policies, because AWS IAM policy is extremely complex in some aspects, and a lot of people love it and hate it at the same time, because you can write policies that you think will do what you think, but in reality they will do something else, because not everybody is following the proper documentation, not everything is supported. So in some use cases that we needed to restrict and so on, we came up with a little more complex policies than needed. And I also didn't like the fact that if you're using the command line client, it always requires the instance ID, which is again not the most user-friendly way to connect to the instance. So yeah, I mean, what I like about the EC2 Instance Connect, it solves most of the problems, and I consider that it's kind of promising. And next contender was the AWS Systems Manager, Session Manager, which is basically an application that provides a connection without exposing SSH port to the network. It requires an agent to run on the instance. So the idea is that agent connects to the API, to the Amazon API, and then connections can be tunneled over the session. And the new event, or actually new event, is introduced, and that's called SSM Start Session. You are using the same way as in EC2 Instance Connect, the IAM policies, and AWS CloudTrail for auditing. So the way how it works, only difference compared to the EC2 Instance Connect is that EC2 instance is connected to the system manager via HTTPS. Actually, it is using WebSockets underneath, and all the sessions are actually tunneled over this particular connection. So this actually means that we do not necessarily need to have port open to the connection. Sorry, port open to the network. Interesting thing here is that the console can be, the SSM sessions can be accessed from the web interface. So, but the underlying protocol is not SSH, which means that we do not need to expose anything. So it works in the same way as EC2 Instance Connect. I mean, it provides the same functionality, but underneath it does it slightly different. And one particular aspect is that System Manager is able to tunnel SSH sessions over SSM. So basically we are able to reuse the HTTPS connection that the agent running on the instance has, and we can do basically a reverse tunnel. So the idea would be that the user would be connecting back to the instance, and SSM provides the channel or the means to connect to the instance. There are two different types of events. So one on the left side is a regular event where we are starting a session. It's called, event name is Start Session, and we just need to provide the request parameter, which is the instance we want to connect, and all the IAM checks and so on happen in the background. And then we get in the response elements, we get back the channels and the URL where we actually can connect to. This is used internally by the plugin that the user needs to run. This plugin is sadly proprietary, and there were attempts to reverse engineer it, but from what I have followed the research, they didn't completely finish it. The second thing on the right is the event, which basically starts the something I call SSH over SSM. So here we are telling the event that we are interested in starting the SSH session, and we provide additional argument, which is the port, and in this case it's 22, and then a target. Then we get again the response element. This response element stream URL, the client uses it, connects to the URL, and then the standard SSH session is tunneled over this. So basically we can use the regular SSH connection like we would be connecting over the network. Only difference is that the port is not exposed to the network. So some of the benefits is that we don't need to run extra instances. We do not need to expose SSH ports to the public network, and basically connection works regardless if you have a public or a private if you have an instance in a public or private subnet. You have access via the web interface. Access management is done via AWS IAM. So again, you can just reuse the existing policies. And the auditing is done again via CloudTrail. And additional benefit that it supports actually both protocols, SSM and SSH. Some of the problems, you need to run additional software on the instance, so which is the SSM agent. But if you are using the stock instances from Amazon or Ubuntu, then this already comes pre-installed. And if you are using other SSM features like patch management or vendor management or asset management, then you most likely are already using it. Again, here is the same thing that I am using AWS IAM policies is I see as advantage, also sometimes as a disadvantage, because sometimes the complexity, the complexity depends on the use case. The CLI client, the basically start session provides you the official client, which is the AWS CLI. It requires a plugin that has to be downloaded from Amazon's website, and there is no public source code, and you always need an instance ID to connect. And if you want to use the SSH with SSM, then you still need to deal with the key management, because basically SSM is just the mechanism how you can connect to the instance. So question is, if we can do better, of course we can always try to combine the both approaches. And this is the tool I wrote slightly sometime before joining Glovo, and then extended more in Glovo. It's called Aws Gate. So what it does, so I called it like better AWS Session Management client. It basically combines the benefits of both, meaning that we are able to use a full capabilities of the Session Manager. But if we are interested in SSH functionality, we are combining this with send SSH public key from EC2 Instance Connect, which allows us to create a solution that we are able to reuse both services, and we do not have to expose actually the network to the port. SSH key management is solved in a way that every time when you are connecting, a new pair of the key is generated. This could be done in a way that, for example, if you have a keys, you can also reuse the existing keys, so it's backwards compatible. Another strong point is that the users don't have to specify just an ID. If you have a naming strategy, or if you are using tags or public and private DNSs, the AWS Gate supports all the possible ways how you can identify the instance. Another big functionality I deemed pretty important to have is basically support for config files. And this, given the layout and so on, then basically you can share the access connection configs to the with your team or the project. So for example, if you're working on multiple projects, or you are a member of multiple teams, then you can have a team specific or project specific config, which you can put in a Git repository, and then you can link it to AWS Gate /config.d. Idea behind the tool is that it should just work, so it should be extremely simple and it shouldn't stand in your way, and the tool also has a 100% test coverage. So some of the some examples how you can actually use the CLI. So for AWS Get Session will open you an SSM session from CLI in a simple way. So basically, you just you specify the profile. In my case, the profile is called GloveUp, and I connect it to the instance via the instance ID. But the idea is that in the documentation there is a way how you can actually connect via the names, DNS, and so on. And this session is basically connected via the SSM. So basically everything is tunneled over the web sockets. Another functionality is AWS Get Ssh. This is basically a way how you can connect your instances with a convenient wrapper. Underneath, it just executes the SSH command, or OpenSSH client. And what it basically does is that it generates the one-time SSH key, uploads it via the send SSH public key operation, and then opens the session and then builds the SSH over SSM session, and you will be connected just like over SSH, but the only difference is that instead of using a direct connection to the server, you are putting a SSM underneath. And summary, my recommendation would be if you can avoid running Bastion host, then do so, because it introduces maintenance burdens on the teams and problems with SSH key management. Consider using the Session Manager for simplicity. Combination of both services, easy to instance connect and AWS SSM, allows us to expose the SSH port to the network. This way we still can keep what people need, sometimes the SSH access, but we do not actually have to expose the port to the network. And AWS IAM for authentication authorization, CloudTrail for accessing, and AWS Gate is kind of a tool that combines both of these approaches into one seamless tool. So the experience is not that bad as it is in other tools. And now I am open for questions.
Oh my God, thank you, Adam. That was amazing. It is so cool to see how our cloud providers helped us solve age-old problems, because this one with SSH port and connectivity, it's horrible. So we do have some questions already in the Q&A. I'm going to read them for you. And of course, everybody is welcome for any question or insight and comment. So the first question comes from Miran, and it's for Adam, of course. So considering the fact that you configured the Bastion host, what sources would you recommend to be most valuable for telemetry collection when it comes to SSH?
Yeah, so basically the idea here is that SSH supports SSH has its own log format, and if you, the most operating systems already come with the pre-configured logging. So basically what we just need to do would be the standard system logging or authentication log. So you see which user was connecting from which IP and so on, which SSH keys were being used, the fingerprints, and so on. All of this can be turned on in the SSH config file.
Okay, thank you. The second question is also from Iran, and it's the following. So if Instance Connect CLI works by SSHing over the public internet, and I have instances in private subnets, I won't be able to SSH into them directly using the Instant Connect unless I have a VPN. Question mark at the end.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems or benefits of Instance Connect is that it introduces some concepts like the IAM and the CloudTrail, and the most interesting one is the support for uploading the keys. And what the client does basically is that it first uploads the key and then it connects to the instance. So if the client is able to reach the I mean, if you are able to reach the SSH port, then the CLI would be able to connect. So in a case that if you are, I mean, if your instance is not in a public subnet, but in private, then if you are able to reach the SSH port, then you are able to connect.
Okay, thank you very much. I also have a question, and let's see, meantime, if anybody else comes. So you're talking about SSM connections. What about performance of SSH over SSM connections? Aren't they too slow?
Oh yeah, I mean, I personally didn't do any research on this, but I came across a few blog posts where people were testing the performance of the solution, and they, for example, found out that if they were copying 1 gigabyte file with SCP, then it was around 70 or 80 times slower than a regular connection.
Wow.
But I would say that this is a trade-off. This is a trade-off between the security and performance. I mean, it's not that it's slow, but I mean it's going to be slower because you have to tunnel. I mean, you have more overhead to connect. But on the other hand, this was not made for for large file transfers.
Okay, makes sense. Just for direct troubleshooting or for executing some commands, that shouldn't be a problem.
I mean, I'm using it daily over the SSH, and I never had any problem with latency or anything. I personally haven't copied the files, but again, this is just what I read in the book.
Okay, then thank you very much. Great insights and conversations, and thank you everybody for Miran for the questions as he broke the ice. So now we are going to Camila, which is a full stack developer and the UX UI designer, and she will show us how developers and security can indeed be friends.
Okay, hi, thank you. Thank you for the introduce. Okay, let's see. You see the screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, well, first of all, hello everyone. My name is Camila. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but I'm a web developer. But the truth is that in the last year, I've been searching a lot of things about secure software development, trying to know more about cybersecurity and learn how I could defend my software projects from possible attacks. This has probably been in great measure motivated because I have several friends, and in fact, my wife that works in cybersecurity. So they constantly send me catastrophic news about attacks, vulnerabilities, and exploits that could be used against me. So this is why I have titled this talk, Why Can We Be Friends? Developers and Security. Well, as I said before, my name is Camila. I currently work as a full stack developer at Ringo Technologies. It's a startup that is digitalizing the real estate market using IoT. So that's why it's security. It takes really a big part of our project. And this is my dog Bolt. If this talk were face-to-face, well, I will ask you, how many of you are developers or do you know developers? And how many of you have you wondered if the security that you are developing is really secure? Or better yet, have you tried to convince business and development teams that security has to be part of applications DNA? The objective of this talk is to show developers that it is necessary to integrate good security practice and start doing secure software development. Many of the things that we will see in this talk are collected in the Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP, which, as you know, is a nonprofit foundation that since December 2001 is working on improving software security. It is important to know that all the projects, tools, documentations, books, and chapters are free and open to all people who actually want to improve their security, the security of their applications. Well, I believe many of you know or have even implemented security development life cycles within your companies. But for those who don't know what it is, well, I give you a short introduction. In a security software development lifecycle, security intervenes in each of the phases of security development. In the definition and requirements, securities, for example, intervene if you're going to save user passwords. Well, we must ensure how to store them safely. In design, the security actually intervenes in the reviewing that design, if it's safe or not. For example, depending on the type of the data that is going to be stored, well, how it should be treated, the connection, for example, and so on, the architecture, and so on. And development, the other two phases are the develop and test. Develop and test both share one simple block, that is secure code review. This is basically because we have to make sure that the code is safe before it deploys to production. And finally, in the deploy implementation or the deploy to production, security takes a big part, doing intrusion test or penetration testing. This testing is actually better if it's external to the company, because they could find another type of vulnerabilities of your application. The security software development lifecycle is based on these building blocks. In this talk, we will look only on these four. The first one is non-functional requirements. This is the most effective of all the building blocks, because it's the container of the other SSDLC building blocks. It can include the application security guidelines, the secure coding checklist, the security policies, among others. So it's the context that gives the other building blocks a way to do that, to ensure that the security, that your application is secure. The other block is secure coding checklist. It's a checklist that should be a simple document to read and consult, 1 or 2 pages at most, that will be used in the phase of reviewing the code of your colleagues. For example, when a code that is ready to merge to the master branch, well, it has to be checked, and you have to be sure that it completes all the checklists that you have. Another block is a static code analysis, that is SCA. Actually, the security software development lifecycle requires a static code analysis, that is also known as white box testing, because it allows developers to find security vulnerabilities in the application source code. And you can find it early in the software development lifecycle in order to avoid to push that code to production environment. So it also ensures that the quality of your coding guidelines and standards are checked before it goes to production. The good part of the SCA is that can be easily integrated into a continuous integration pipeline of the development cycle. And the last one that we're going to see is dynamic code analysis, that is DCA, also known as the black box test, because it can find vulnerabilities and security weaknesses in a running application, usually a web application. It's known as black box because you won't see the code underneath, but you would see the full running application. So you're going to test the full running application. It does that by employing fault injection techniques of an app, such as feeding malicious data to the software to identify common security vulnerabilities, such as SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and so on. So how could we protect our application and bring security closer to our developments? These are several ways to do it, but I think that one of the most logical ways to do it is for the security to take place in the continuous integration pipeline. So what is a continuous integration pipeline and continuous delivery pipeline? CI and CD pipeline is a series of instructions that are executed every time we make a change in our code, and we push that code to our repository in the cloud. It helps automate all the steps that includes a software delivery process that enables development teams to deploy code to production or stay in or test environment. For example, this is a CI/CD pipeline example, and the process starts with a change in our code in local, and we commit, and then we push those changes into the repository that is in the cloud. So once you upload your code, it goes through a series of steps or instructions in the continuous integration pipeline. So first, it will be the checkout. The checkout, basically, what it does is to install all of the necessary packages and dependencies that the app needs to work. The second part is the part of the testing. So all the unit and integration tests will run in that environment, and once it finishes the test and all the continuous integration pipeline, it goes to the continuous delivery pipeline, where actually we build our app. So in case that you're using Docker for your application, the building of that image will be in this part of the process. And finally, that image or app will be deployed in our in production or staging, depending on when do you want to deploy that code. So this process, it's automatic. So it requires a minimum effort from the developer. So I think that maybe this is a good place to put a piece of checking the security of your application. So we could actually add a couple of more steps within this pipe, this continuous integration pipeline, that we're gonna help us to check the security to our code and our dependencies. So if we do this, we add in these two steps, actually, we can achieve a lot of things. First of all, we will have a code that is in production with a minimum of security. Why a minimum of security? Because we check the dependencies, we check that those dependencies don't have any vulnerabilities, or at least that they're sanitized. And also we have because we're going to add a static code analysis in here, we're gonna see that at least the code that we are uploading we are deploying to production have a minimum of quality and more. So we will avoid possible attacks, especially using non-exploits present in dependencies. For example, the famous case of Equifax that actually was because of an exploit, an exploit of a non-vulnerability in one of their dependencies. And finally, and I think that as a developer, it's like the main reason is that you will save a lot of development time, resolve vulnerabilities, dependency bugs. Because instead of uploading more than 500 dependencies with vulnerabilities that you're for sure, I mean, upgrading those dependencies, you know that maybe in some point your code will break and you have to implement a new way to use that library and more. So instead of doing like a huge issue to fix those dependencies, well, you could update those dependencies once they're detected. So it will be easier. It will be so much less dependencies to solve in one issue. So it's at least for us developer is really good, because you just have to upgrade from version 1.2.2 to 1.2.3. So the changes between those versions should be really minimal. So this can be a first step to start bringing security closer to developer in a simple way. Now let's see some tools and good practices that must be taken into account when bringing security closer to development. I divided this this part into two parts. One focus on adding security to our code, and another focus on checking our dependencies. These are the tools that we can use to analyze our code. First of all, the SAST, or Static Application Security Testing tools. I choose just a few of them. I mean, there are 1,000, well, not 1,000, but a couple. I like this because they're multilingual, and at least 2 of them, they're free to open source projects. So we have SonarQube, Cuban, Bug Scout, and Veracode. These are tools that help us to do a static code analysis. And as I mentioned before, these tools are known as white boxing testing because the tool has access to the application code. And it goes through the source code looking for patterns that indicates an insecure programming, and that is a potential security problem that tool will notify it to us before that code deploys to production. The second of all are the DAST, or the AST, Dynamic Application Security Testing tools. I used to pick 2 of them. There are multilinguals. There are American Fuzzy Loop and Veracode. So these, as I said before, those are known as black box testing. It only has external visibility of the application. That is, as a visitor or attacker that actually will see the system. They will not see the source code, but they will see the running application. So from there, the tool launched 100 of query and attacks with the intention of replicating the activity of an attacker and finding the application's vulnerabilities. And third of all, and I think that actually I didn't know them until I did this talk, is the interactive application security testing tools, the IAST, that actually they combine the static focus and the dynamic focus. and they have access to the internal structure of the application. And also see how the application responds when there is a traffic. So this vantage point actually offers many advantages because the IS agent is working inside the app. So it can apply its analysis to the entire app, which means that you can analyze all its code, its running control and data flow information, its configuration information, the HTTP requests and responses, the libraries that the app are using, is using, the frameworks and other components, and actually also allows to analyze the backend connection information. So these tools, access to all the information allows, access to all of this information allows the IST engine to cover more code and actually produce more accurate results and verify a broad range of security rules more than SAS and DAST. Well, now actually in most of the applications, there are some statistics that says that the whole application, only the 40 and 30% of the code of that application, it's your code, is the one that you made. The rest of it, that could be 70 or more, yes, more than 70% of the code are the dependency. So it's really important to check the dependencies of your application. These are some tools that allow us to analyze the dependency of our code and detect those that need to be updated because they already have known vulnerabilities. So I know that speaking with some of my colleagues, some of developer colleagues, some of them say like, well, if I want to make a small project, proof of concept, I don't want to deploy and have a fancy CI pipeline or I don't know, to check all the dependencies and more. Well, for example, if you're developing something in the JavaScript environment, you already have these commands that are included in the package manager, like npm and yarn. If you write in your terminal npm audit or yarn audit, they will search inside the dependencies, all the dependencies that have unknown vulnerabilities, and you as a developer has to upgrade those updates, those dependencies. Now I come to the good practices, and this is something that I really like, because first of all, it's nice and it will be like a better word to development and security if we integrate a secure software development lifecycle. It could be Aws Clasp or Microsoft SDL. But the thing is that we should try at least. I mean, I know it's complicated to negotiate it with product and business and to do so, but I think that nowadays the security, now that we are hyper connected, the security should be really in our DNA, and we have to have some time to implement something like this. The third of the good practice could be make sure that your application is at least protected from the OWASP top 10. OWASP top 10 is one of the, I think, most known projects of OWASP that are the top 10 most common vulnerabilities to, I don't know, a web application or a mobile or a IoT. Well, So at least if you want to, you have to make sure that your application at least is protected from the Aws top 10. Then make sure that the secrets and environment variables are well protected. We don't want them to be captured for any script and publishing as there's a page, actually, I'm going to show you. Annie, if you're watching this, I know, thank you for your information because I didn't know this page and it's just amazing. You're watching this? I don't know if you're watching the browser. Someone can tell me?
We see only slides.
Only the slides? Okay,
yeah,
let me see.
only the slides now. Maybe you can make a new tab on those. And...
Okay, let me see if I can put it here.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, so what are this one? Okay, here, this is a web page that actually what it does is to search in all of the public repositories in GitHub, searching for tokens, for secret keys, for, I don't know, a lot of the good things. So in order to avoid this and that you expose sensitive data, because it's actually one of the top 10, always top 10, it's better and you have to make sure that you protect your credentials and your keys and more. Okay. Wait. What is it? Just hi, sorry. Okay, you see the presentation now?
Yes, we're back to seeing the presentation.
Okay, yep. Right. Now, a good practice, and it's a silly one, but a really good one, with dependencies, the best practice is to update your dependency. Seriously, it's useless if you know that you detect how many dependencies you have vulnerabilities, and you put I don't know, sneak or do an npm audit, and you know that have those vulnerabilities, but it doesn't work if you just ignore them. So you have to actually update them. And finally, well, here I have I put a series, a lot of links and resources. However, in the presentation, they have several links too that you can add more things and investigate a lot of things. Okay, so any questions?
Okay, Cami, thank you so much. Your insights were absolutely amazing. And we do indeed have some questions. So the first question is from Daniel. So he asks, what do you think would entice more developers to be mindful of security and proactively work with the security teams to report and deal with potential security issues? How do we bridge this gap?
Security teams. Okay, let me think. I'm actually reading it.
Yeah, it appears in QA for us.
Yes, it's a big one. So what do you think? Well, actually, that's a really good question. I mean, to be honest, when I speak with a lot of developers, with my friends that are developers, they actually don't know anything about security, not even Aws top 10 and more. So I think that maybe in order to reduce that gap, there has to be more programs or yes, more programs. If a company has a security security team, the people from security should trying to introduce those topics to developers and actually aware them to all the possibilities and all the attacks that an application could suffer. I think that in the developers, we just don't know a lot of things of security, but honestly, it's just, they're like another topic and we're just trying to avoid it. So I think that you have to be more patient with us. Actually, because of my friends and my wife that actually working in cybersecurity, that they they just forced me to be more aware of that, because send me a lot of like news and stuff. But I think that the big problem, and I think that the best thing to reduce that gap is to developers know more about security and more about how to protect the application easily.
Okay, that is actually true, and security should also extend that hand to them. The second question we have is anonymous, and it's the following. It's also in QA. All of dependency updates do the same, but the quality depends on the data source. Which dependency update service is the best one from your experience?
Well, it depends actually. I know that GitHub is doing a lot of, they're putting a lot of efforts and resources to actually give you a really good feedback of the dependencies that you have. That actually, if you're responsible, you don't even need to add an extra tool, because actually GitHub is doing this, and they actually send you some emails that hey, you have I don't know, 10 dependencies update. So the quality, which one is best? Well, I don't know. Maybe it depends on your case, because there are some good, for example, if you have SonarQube added in your pipeline, there are a lot of plugins that you can add it there. So maybe you can choose depending on the integration capabilities of a tool. I don't know, but they're pretty much the same, because what they do inside is they check they contrast the vulnerabilities list of your application with the published known list of all the dependencies that are vulnerabilities, that have vulnerabilities. For example, I think that there is a list of I don't remember the framework of security that is really famous. Could you help me, Diana? There's a framework that has like all the well, I don't remember the name. Well, but there's a lot of like published non-list, published list.
Oh, like the awesome list, like all the ones, the awesome
Mitre attack.
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Mitre.
Yes, Mitre attack framework.
Yes, Mitre has published, well, one of, Mitre is one of them. They have a public list of the dependencies that they have found. So what it does, for example, NPM or Yarn Audit or the other tools, is to check the version of the dependencies and see if the dependencies of that version of the library is reported on those kind of lists. So it's pretty much the the same.
Perfect. The next question, it's a little longer. It's also in QA, so I'm going to read it. You can come read it
Okay.
also meanwhile. So from Jesus, there is a question about security at apps. How to protect secrets. In iOS, setting secrets in code is a bad idea, even if they are obfuscated. Move to please, it's a really bad idea because this file is plain text visible to everyone. Moving to XC config, it's the same because the secrets are visible from list. Using Coco Apod's secrets seems like to be a good idea, but I don't want to use this dependency manager. Exchange secrets with server seems to be the good idea, but I didn't find anything to follow this method of exchange secrets. In this case, if the client is a malicious edge, you are solved. I mean, for example, the secrets of third-party frameworks like Twitter. So secrets management, the recommended.
Yeah, yes, actually, that's a really difficult one because I haven't found the perfect yet. But at least in my experience, we actually have them in our CI continuous integration tool. We use Circle CI, but you could use Travis and more, because if you put those secrets in your pipeline in your CI pipeline, well, you know that secret at least won't be public, and it will be obfuscated, and it will be used only in that step of the CI pipeline. So it's really interesting to do that. For example, if you know that you for Dockerize your image in your application image, and you know that for the building part you need a specific variable, you can store them in your CI or your CD pipeline, and then it will automatically add it in that part of the process. So you can avoid to push them obviously into your repositories. This is a bad idea, but I don't know, maybe it's a good way. I just spoke with a person of security, and I just told him that what I was doing to put it in the CI pipeline, and he told me like, okay, that's a smart idea. So he never thought it, and he was like, yes, actually it makes sense, because the CI, they obfuscated the password and the secret, so they're going to be sure, except if you, for example, I don't know, maybe they have an attack or something like that, but maybe you can check it that way.
Okay, that was great. And we have one more question from Miran, and this is also about the relationship between security and developers. So do you think that maybe more use cases between InfoSec and Dev World would develop a better connection between these two areas? This way the developers would be much more aware when it comes to secure coding and so on.
I think that, yeah, that actually could work. I mean, having, I think that it's going to be, sounds really, really weird, but we as developers, we have like a lot of functionality to works and more. So if you tell us, and you, for example, give us a specific use case, it could work. And also, if you tell me like, okay, you will spend less time solving this part because you are already covered it, so I buy it for sure. If you tell me it will cost you less to fix the security bug because you constantly are checking your code, or I don't know, maybe some specific use case, well, actually I buy it, because I will have more time to do another thing. So I think that time is really precious.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I truly understand you. It's we need to think that security has to do an effort as well, you know, and not only it has to do like communication, active communication role. Oh my God, Cami, thank you so much. We had so many different great questions. It was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Now we need to thank Adam and Glovo for this, of course.
Yes.
So I hope everybody has enjoyed the talks and that you had a very good takeaway from today's meetup, and that is how easy it is for all of us to work together and make the world, or at least our code in this case, more secure. I'm so hopeful these will make us have more cool projects in the future and inter-team projects. And I encourage you to visit, call, send a Slack, I don't know, throw a rock, or even message your favorite security engineer and start that conversation. And also for the security people out there, this is a great idea to start extending your hand to the devs with some security awareness, with some trainings, with a coffee or a beer, and with existing use cases. So you can clearly explain and show them, as Cami said, how to save them time and how to save all of us time, because we will all work less if problems don't happen from the beginning. So this can only work as a bidirectional effort. Unfortunately, as we can't continue now with the chats and the drinks and the beer afterwards, I do hope that we will do that soon and we can do it safely, and I can't wait for the physical meetups. So that means that we will let it here, and I want to thank everybody so much. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Cami. The talks were incredible. Thank you for the questions and for everybody's participation. And thank you, Glovo, for giving us this platform so we can chat and to prepare to improve this great relationship between development and security. Hope you have a great summer and see you at the next meetup. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.